Hi guys! I got into Stanford, Berkeley, Wharton, and MIT for my MBA and also received $50,000 in fellowship awards. Here is my entire MBA application process broken down into 8 parts. Some background context about myself. I did not come from a typical MBA background, so I didn't come from investment banking, consulting, or big tech. In fact, my background is pretty unconventional. I did not go to an Ivy League, and this was my first time applying to US education institutions. So naturally, I found the entire process really confusing, intimidating, and daunting. And all in all, I spent about 9 months on my MBA application. And I really had to go through this process of self-reflection and introspection and really dig deep to tell my story. I created this video to help others on the journey because I was in the exact same position a year ago. And if this video is too long for you, I created a 50-page guide to walk you through the 8-step process. And I also included my essays, resumes, short answer questions, and a list of interview questions, as well as all the resources and tools that I use for my MBA application process. And you can get it in the description below. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is to get a good GMAT or GRE score. For top US business schools, you should be aiming for at least a 720 on the GMAT or at least a 330 on the GRE. Now, of course, there are people who have gotten in with lower scores, and I don't want you to spend so much time on the GMAT or GRE trying to get that perfect score, but this is my advice. Don't give AdComs any reason to poke holes in your application. If you've gotten a good GMAT or GRE score, good for you, you can move on to the next sections of the video. However, if you're struggling with the GMAT, let me share with you my story. I like to think I'm good at studying. I was a straight-A student, I was in a dean's list for 3 years, and I graduated with a 3.7 GPA. I studied every single day for 3 months for the GMAT, and then proceeded to take the test 5 times. Yes, 5 times. And I never once got above 700 for the test. I was really distraught because during my practice test, I would be scoring between 730 to 770, but somehow when it came to test day, I just couldn't get the score that I wanted. I was super stressed out and I was really on the verge of giving up. Then I switched to the GRE and I studied for 2 weeks using Magoosh's resources, took the test, and got 332 on my first try, which is equivalent to a 750 on the GMAT. And for me, this is what made all the difference between the GMAT and the GRE. The GMAT is question adaptive, meaning the next question depends on the previous question, and you can't go back to change your answers. But the GRE is section adaptive, meaning the next section of questions depends on the previous section of questions. And within that same section, you can go back to change your answers for the previous questions. Step 2. Understanding your what. These refer to your career goals. What are your short-term career goals? What are your long-term career goals? And what will you do with an MBA? Your goals should have these 4 elements. Number 1, specific. Don't give vague and broad goals like, I want to break into venture capital after my MBA. Be specific. Which geography? Which industry? What problem are you trying to solve? The more specific you are, the more convincing you will be. Number 2, your goals should be realistic. You need to demonstrate that you will be reasonably successful in achieving your goals. Your goals can be so far out there that AdComs doesn't believe that you will achieve them. If you have prior experience in the field or industry that you want to be in post-MBA, that's great. However, if you're making a career transition or a career pivot, then you'll want to be able to demonstrate that you have some sort of indirect experience through your leadership roles in your community, your volunteering work, or your passion or your interest or your hobby. Anything to demonstrate that you have a reasonable chance of success in achieving your goals will make your goal realistic and more believable. Remember, you need to show, not tell, that you can reasonably achieve your goals. Number 3, your goals should be impactful. It should not be self-serving because remember, business schools are looking for future leaders. So talk about how you will change your future company, the culture, an industry, society, the community, or even the world. Lastly, your goals should be differentiated. And I don't mean different from everyone else. You can have the same goal as the person next to you. But what makes your goal differentiated is your story. Why are you interested in tech, healthcare, climate? What is a personal story that caused you to be interested in this field? If you can tie your career goals back to your personal story, your personal motivations and passions, that will differentiate you from the rest of the applicants who may have the same career goal, and that makes you memorable to the AdComs. Step number 3, knowing your why. Once you have your career goals, the next question to ask is why? Why MBA? Why now? And why this school? So, why do an MBA? The analogy I like to use is this. So think about what you've done in step 2, which is your career goals. And that is where you want to be. And this is where you are right now. And the MBA is meant to help you bridge the gap from where you are right now and where you want to be. Maybe you're an engineer and you want to run up your business toolkit. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to build your network of investors and founders and operators. Whatever the case, you need to demonstrate how an MBA will help you reach and achieve your career goals. And the next question, why now? Why is now the right time for you to do your MBA? And the best way to tackle this question is to point to a recent development or a recent realization that you've had in your career. Maybe you worked on a new project at work and that somehow unlocked a passion or interest in you. Maybe you had a coffee chat with your senior leaders in your company and that made you realize that an MBA would really accelerate your career development. Maybe you started volunteering at a local community event and you realized that you had a passion for that. Whatever it is, you need to point to something that's recent in order to be convincing as to why now is the right time for you to do your MBA. Answering the why now question is important, especially if you're on the younger side with less than 5 years of working experience, or if you're on the older side with more than 5 years of working experience. And lastly, why this specific school? This is where you really have to do your research for each and every single school that you're applying to. Don't just rely on secondary research, which is stuff that you can pull from the school's website. Do your primary research. Reach out to student ambassadors, current students, or even previous students on LinkedIn. Really get to understand the culture of the school and what the school has to offer. If I'm not wrong, Berkeley and MIT actually ask you to list the names of the students that you've spoken with, the events that you've attended, because they really want to see if you're serious about the school or not. And step number 4, writing your essays, which is the toughest part of the application, in my opinion. This is probably the hardest part of the application for me to help through a video, but I'll try my best. Before I go on, I'd like to share 2 resources that helped me through my essay writing journey, and I don't think I would have gotten into the school that I got in if not for these resources. So the first one is ApplicantLab. ApplicantLab is an affordable online tool that helps with your MBA application process from start to finish. I use ApplicantLab and their school-specific essay advice was really helpful for me as I thought about piecing together my stories and writing my essays. They provide school-specific advice for each school, including the character traits and personality values that they're looking for, how to craft your essay, and how to build your personal brand to tailor your essays to fit what the schools are looking for. The second resource is this book called What Matters Most and What More by MBA Mission, and it's a compilation of 50 essays for the GSB and HBS. The book also provides some frameworks for you to use when it comes to crafting your essay, as well as the different approaches that you may want to use. I used this book primarily as a base for inspiration while I was brainstorming ideas for my personal essay. So before you start on your essay, start by brainstorming building blocks of your essay. And I call them the story banks. And these are both personal and professional stories that showcase your character traits, your personality, and who you are as a person. I started writing 10 to 15 of these short stories, answering questions like what it was like growing up in Singapore, what were my passions, my hobbies, what motivated me, what were defining moments in my life, what were things that changed the trajectory of my life, as well as the accomplishments that I was proud of. Initially, I focused a lot of my professional achievements in the workplace, but what I realized was you also want to strike a balance between being vulnerable as a person and sharing that personal side of yourself and the high achiever that you are in the workplace. So a good litmus test for your essay is, after someone reads your essay, can they come up with 5 words or phrases that describes you? And are those 5 words or phrases character traits that you want to highlight in your essay? If the answer is yes, then your essay is probably in good shape. I share my essays and stories in the guide below, so if you want to use them as inspiration, feel free to check them out. Step 5. The MBA resume. If you're thinking about using the same resume that you use for job applications for your MBA application, you're probably on the wrong path. And that's because job applications resume focus on your roles and responsibilities, while MBA resume typically focuses on your greatest achievements. And I would recommend using the XYZ formula. Accomplish X as measured by Y by doing Z. For example, I doubled sales to $100 million by developing a new strategy to increase conversion rates. And don't forget to always start each bullet point with an action word. Led, developed, launched, pioneered, spearheaded. This shows impact, urgency, and it will help you elevate your MBA resume. In terms of structure, keep it to one page, starting with your work experience. Have 3 to 5 bullet points for each working experience that you have, followed by your education, and then your community or leadership roles or projects that you have been a part of, and then lastly, your personal hobbies and interests. For your personal hobbies, make sure it's stuff that you're really interested in and not stuff you think will make you look cool. Because if you can't talk about it for more than 5 minutes straight, then it's probably not really an interest or a hobby. So think very carefully about what you want to put in that section. Step 6, your recommendation letters. Now, depending on the school that you're applying for, you will need either 1 or 2 recommendation letters. At least one recommender has to be your direct current supervisor. If you've been in your job for maybe less than 3 months, then you can approach your previous direct supervisor. But the key thing is it has to be a direct supervisor. Now, you may be tempted to choose someone that is really high ranking, like your CEO or this managing director that is really high up in the organization structure. But the bottom line is you want to be able to choose someone that is fully invested in your decision to go to business school, will be able to invest the time and energy into writing your recommendation letter, and someone who will be able to check their emails and make sure you don't miss the deadline. And most importantly, you need to choose someone who will be willing to advocate for you. When I was at AppMeet Weekend at Stanford, they were reading out some of the recommender letters, and one of the recommender actually wrote that if Stanford does not admit this student, then it will be Stanford's loss. The kind of recommender that could say such strong words and really believe in you will show through or will come through in those letters, so choose carefully. And please do not ever write your recommender letters yourself and ask your recommenders to sign it, because business schools these days have a way to tell whether you wrote it or not, even if you think you have concealed your writing style relatively well. There is a way to tell. So just have integrity and be honest, and find a recommender who could help you write the recommender letter, and don't ever write it yourself. That being said, there are ways that you can work with your recommenders to ensure that the things that they write about in the recommendation letter complements your overall application. Here's how I worked with my recommenders. I came up with a list of 5-star stories: situation, task, action, results. And then I sat with my recommenders for a kickoff meeting to go through each of these 5-star stories and ask if they have anything to add or if there's anything that they didn't feel comfortable talking about. For schools that needed 2 recommenders, I made sure to choose 2 complementary stories. So some stories could focus on my hard skills and analytical traits, while other stories could focus on my interpersonal skills. You should reach out to your recommenders at least 2 months before your deadline. And depending on their schedule, you should have a weekly or bi-weekly cadence with them to check in on how they've been doing and progressing on their recommender letters. A tip here is to send your recommender a calendar invite to submit your recommender letter, but don't do it on the deadline. Do it at least 3 days before the deadline, so there's nothing that can go wrong there. Step number 7, the application form itself. So you've gotten everything in order: your GMAT or GRE score, your resume, your essays, and your recommended letters. And what you need to do is to put all of that in the application form. Now, a lot of people make the mistake and think that the application form is something that they just dump everything in and they submit. No, do not underestimate the amount of time you will spend on the application form. It took me 2 to 3 hours per application form per school to fill up from start to finish. And this is because there are many short answer questions hidden in the application form, and you actually have to take time to think about these answers and also make sure that your answers fit in the word limit. So here's my tip. For the first school that you're applying to, save your responses in a separate Google Doc. These are responses to things like your personal and family information, your employment history, your education, your awards, your academic achievements, all of it. Save those answers on a separate Google Sheet, because for the next schools, they might ask for similar information, and instead of typing everything over again, you can simply copy and paste it from your Google Doc. And don't forget to constantly save your application as you go along. And we're at the final step, step number 8, the interview. After you submit your application online, it will be about a 1 to 2 month wait before you hear back from the schools again. If you get invited to interview, congratulations! You are one step closer to your dream MBA. Some of the interview questions are what we covered in this 8-step process. What are your career goals? Why MBA? Why now? And why this specific school? On top of that, you need to research school-specific questions for the school that you're interviewing for. And for the school-specific questions, I use ApplicantLab, and that really helped me to tailor my responses to each school. You should also know your resume inside out. Depending on the school, your interviewer may only have your resume, or they might have your entire application. Regardless, your resume will most likely be the starting point of your interview, so make sure you know every single bullet by heart. When you're preparing for an interview, make sure you write out your answers in bullet points and not full sentences. Practice speaking out loud in front of a mirror or in front of a friend. At the end of the day, it's a conversation between you and the interviewer, so relax, be yourself, make sure you've got your talking points, but enjoy the process. So this is the entire MBA application process broken down into 8 steps. I hope this has been helpful for those of you who are going through your application right now. I totally feel you because I was in your shoes a year ago, and I really want to help other people who are going through this journey as well. If you have any questions or you'd like me to dive into a specific topic, because I know it's a lot, let me know in the comments below. For those of you who are applying for your MBA this year, good luck and all the best!